Hey everybody, this is Kent, and I just wanted to take a little time to show you the new direction the channel is going to be taking. We started this channel back in 2019 to sell Crystalac product. We were a master distributor of theirs back then, and things went really well until COVID hit in 2020 and supply chain issues and shutdowns and price increases and multiple other things that have happened during and since then that has ended that relationship as far as a full-blown distributor for them. So we're expanding the channel to be more than just Crystalac and eco-friendliness of that product in a crafting perspective. We're going to be expanding the channel to more of an eco-friendly channel in all areas, from plant-based eating type situation if you're in a vegetarian realm, for reduction and reuse and recycle of products, buying sustainable products, conscious consumerism, all of those various things that go along with a sustainable lifestyle. So I'd just like to run through some of that and let you know what's going on with that and what to expect coming up. So as we do that, the sustainable living, it's not just a destination, but it's a journey for a while, and it's one that involves constant learning, adaptation, some mindfulness about the types of choices we make in our daily lives, and it's a commitment to balance our needs with the health of our planet. Hopefully we can leave something a little bit better for our kids than how we found it. Um, you know, We've done a lot of good things since I was a child, and what my parents did before me, and I think now that as adults we owe it to our children to at least make an effort to do some kind of clean living and some kind of sustainable living. So that regardless of your opinions on climate change and resource depletion and environmental degradation and all of the various things you might hear that are political hot topics, I don't really want to get into that, but some of those do have some relevance. Are they man-made? Are they not man-made? That's really not for me to make a decision one way or the other. All I want to do is just provide information on how we can live more sustainably, live cleaner, enjoy a happy life, and just love one another. I mean, what the heck? It's not like we're here to be enemies on any of it, and none of my content will ever be anything that would be hateful, even though I'm sure there will be disagreements on some of the things we talk about. So with that being said, right, I mean, one of the topics we will be exploring, even though I'm not a full plant-based diet kind of guy, right? I do like some red meat and animals occasionally, but I know there's many that have been full-blown vegetarianism and vegan and those types of things. And I know people that, including some of my own children, have taken that route to living, and there's absolutely zero wrong with that. And we will be exploring some ways to address both the vegetarian lifestyle and some mindful eating choices, along with sustainable farming and ranching, even in the cattle, pork, and chicken industry. Many of which say contribute meaningfully to greenhouse gases and such things as that. So, can we do something to decrease greenhouse gas? Sure, everybody can, I think, to some degree. And let's hope we'll do that and see if we can't do a little bit to reduce our ecological footprint, just a little bit anyway. Right? I mean, as population continues to grow, our country continues to get more crowded, our cities continue to get larger, and the more grass you take away and the more open land you take away, the more important some of these things come, right? So we'll be looking into some things on how we can be a little bit more mindful, and possibly the impact of plant-based vegetarian type diets, or like I said, even being more mindful in the meats that we buy and how those are produced, just to make the whole system a little bit better for us all. So we'll see what we can do to inform you in that realm as well as we go along. So as we move on, then obviously, that all plays into um, buying local, right? Not being huge corporate anything, being organic. I know having some of my family in the farming industry that farms organically, that's an important thing for us to do. Is it the cheapest thing to do? No. Does it cost the end consumer more in some cases? Yes. But is it the right thing to do? Very possibly. Right? At least they're not destroying their land with organic sprays or inorganic sprays with pesticides and other harmful chemicals that might leach into that soil and stay there for years, run off into the lakes and streams and rivers, and continue pollution downstream that's not even intended, but ends up happening just naturally as Mother Nature does what she does. And rain falls, rain leaches into the ground, water goes into the water table or runs off, and before you know it, we've got some other issues. So we'll be talking about organic farming, organic ranching, or organic eating, organic foods, all of those things that play into that. And we will be exploring some good reasons on why to look local, right? And help out local farmers and keep small business in place. So I think those are important. That the more and more we go to a corporate environment, then the less and less we have any emphasis on being good stewards. I think people start falling behind the board of directors in a profit motive, and you could be doing that by supporting the small guy in small business. And so we'll definitely be looking into some of those topics along the way and see how those play out for us. I think that local business, organic businesses, it certainly approaches or supports biodiversity. It helps in what we were saying of less pollution of our soil, and reduces pollution of waterways and all of those good things we've already mentioned a little bit. We'll also be getting into some reduction of food waste. And that may be one of the better points that we could say about sustainable eating. I shouldn't say better, but one of the many aspects of sustainable type living. And approximately a third of the world of all the food produced for human consumption in the world is wasted. That comes from the Food and Agriculture Organization over at the United Nations. So waste is not just a loss of food, but a waste of resources, that we use in producing that. Water, land, energy, labor, capital, all of those things are being wasted every time we waste those. They're still away and not do everything we can to reduce our waste in the food realm. So, reducing it obviously can start in the kitchen with better meal planning and storage techniques to extend the life of our foods and perishable items, composting of food scraps and such things as that as a way to recycle the nutrients back into the soil, reducing the need for chemical or fertilizers and enhancing soil health. But in a broader context, obviously, it includes supporting food recovery programs and businesses that use and sell surplus food. There's plenty of those out there. There's plenty of food banks that could be using any food that you're not able to reuse or save. So just making conscious choices around that, about what we eat and how we nourish our bodies and the planet simultaneously. I think the shift moves then toward not necessarily plant-based exclusively, but certainly much more ecological consideration in our eating, along with supporting local and organic farmers, minimizing our food waste, all of those being very powerful and sustainable steps into the future. Another area we'll be looking into over time is reducing, reusing, and recycling. So, first and perhaps the most crucial step in all of that, in the mantra of that reduce, reuse, recycle, is to reduce. And the concept behind that obviously is about curbing the consumption of resources so we can mitigate waste in the generation of that from the outset. We're we're a very consumer-driven society, and it's just too easy and so easy to accumulate items that we've don't really need or use. And look at the storage facility business. How many storage sheds do you know of people that have various seasons of things stored in the storage units because there's not room enough to keep them in their home, or just, I don't know, they just don't get rid of things. And I'm not in that realm. I'm more of a minimalist realm. If I don't use it, or if I haven't used it for 6, 7 months, then it's going to a different use. And we will certainly be looking into those things, not necessarily a minimalist lifestyle per se, but definitely some things that we could look toward that. So, just being intentional about purchases certainly can significantly lessen our environmental impact, reducing consumption. It starts with basically needs versus wants. Um, Many of our purchases, mine included, are not because I need it, it's because I want it. And, I need to do a better job of really taking that into consideration of, do I want it, or do I really need it? And start shaping some of my buying decisions around that. And we'll discuss some of that to the extent that we can going forward. So the goal obviously is to or to foster a culture of sufficiency, where we buy fewer, better quality items as opposed to just buying crap, to be lack of a better term. Right? The throwaway society we've gotten into that has made it easier to buy something cheaply, use it, and throw it away, as opposed to buying something that's of better quality, holding on to it, repairing it as it needs to be repaired, and using it for a long period of time. And that's not just in our consumer adaptation of that. It's actually become a business way of doing business. It's cheaper for people and companies to produce a throwaway item than it is to produce a quality item. And there's only one way to affect that, and that's to quit buying those cheaper throwaway type items and look more toward a more sustainable and quality product in the long run. And at some point in time, then that eventually makes its way back up the supply chain into people that are manufacturing and distributing those products. So it's not just buying or being totally minimalist in all aspects of our lives, but there are certain aspects we certainly can. And it doesn't mean living without possessions, but rather making mindful decisions about that. It's about a conscious curation of items and resisting the temptation of impulse buys and the lure of the fast fashion or fast tech. Obviously, in our day and age, it's also has much to do about embracing digital tools and services that we can also help reducing physical possessions. Digital books, for example, documents drawn out on and stored in PDF or stored in the cloud can definitely cut down on paper use, which has been a pet peeve of mine for years, as we've slowly but surely worked into a quote-unquote paperless society, that I have more paper sitting around on my desk today than I probably did 5 years ago. I can't explain it, other than I still get a ton of paper mail, even though all of my bills and necessary documents are all electronic. The paper continues to pile up. So that's a huge hurdle that we still need to overcome. And luckily we recycle all that paper, but it's still a pet peeve of mine that I continuously end up with a inbox full of paper that mostly is junk marketing and things that I don't need. And it's, excuse me, as we've gone through taking all of the necessary forms electronic, those same companies that I deal with, and even companies I don't deal with, just advertising, seems to show up with more paper things asking me to do more things in my mailbox every month. So that's just one of my pet peeves, and we will definitely talk about that. And the good thing though is all right, yeah, we get all of that, but we recycle and we reuse as much of that paper as possible. So yeah, it goes back into the system, but it still has gone through a whole cycle of growing a tree, cutting down a tree, milling a tree, grabbing that tree and hauling it to a mill, making paper out of that, getting paper, postage, printing, ink, all of those things that go into uh, sending me one flyer to vote for candidate X during this year's election that you could send me an email about, because I'm going to throw it away the same way I throw the flyer away in my mailbox. But again, pet peeve. So we recycle it, right? Whether it's paper or whether it's jars or other household items that once it's done with its original use, we try to recycle it or upcycle it for something else, as far as um, making a gift out of, say, a textile or a fashion piece that maybe has gone out of style. Um, Whether it's jars that we use now for storage or paper that we just recycle for going back into the system, and the same with plastics, right? We recycle all of our plastics as well, given the amount of manufacturing and oil and all of the other resources that go into plastic anything. Then we do everything in our power to recycle that, and we'll continue to do that. So it's just one of those we need to look at. How do we maybe go into some other areas like community initiatives of repairing workshops, if you will? If you have items that are broken and need to be repaired or upcycled, maybe swap meets are actually great examples of using upcycling and reusing in action. Just keep it out of the landfill. Maybe to foster a little bit more of community spirit as something that we could really use these days, right? That in our me versus you mentality of this decade, it seems that maybe all of these things play into a kinder and gentler world where it's really not me against you or us against them and them against the other people. That we really are all of the same mind, right? We're all in the same place. We all have to go the same direction. We were all born. We're all going to die. Those are the two definites in our life. And in the meantime, we may as well just get along with one another and see what we can do to make the place in which we live the best place that we can make it. So recycling, right? So we've talked about that. Some people say that's the recycling as a last resort type situation, but it's most of us use it as the go-to eco-friendly activity, and maybe it should be seen as a last step instead of a first step when it comes to the whole process of reducing, reusing, and recycling. And I can certainly agree with that in some degree. If we go into more of a minimalistic, let's think about what we're doing before we buy a product and how can we use or extend its life on down the road, then I can certainly see where recycling would be your last step in that whole cycle. So yeah, it does divert waste from landfills and it allows things to be reprocessed into new products, but it's certainly not the panacea by any means. It's a process that in itself consumes energy and resources, and not all materials can be recycled indefinitely. At some point in time, they will eventually end up in a landfill somewhere once they've made it through as many cycles as they can make it through. So, but if we can understand what can and cannot be recycled in local collection systems, then it's essential to avoid that wish cycling cycle, if you will, the well-intentioned act of placing non-recyclable items in a recycling bin, which now we feel like we've done good, but may end up causing more harm than it causes good. So recycling obviously would require proper sorting and cleaning of recyclables. That's a crucial element, and not just throwing dirty items into that. Taking the time to rinse containers, sort out materials, obviously can improve the efficiency of the recycling process and the quality of that output of recycling on the other end. Supporting businesses and products that use recycled materials, that's another way we can just create market demand for those types of materials that we are recycling and ensure that we recycle, that they find a new life in new products. So It's a rigorous approach, obviously. All of these several pronged approach in this of adopting a rigorous approach to reducing consumption, um, finding innovative ways to reuse and upcycle, and then of course recycling effectively. Doing so, we can make some significant strides in a circular economy that would definitely mimic many of the natural cycles where nothing is wasted and everything serves a purpose in a continual loop of use and reuse. So certainly something that we will be looking at over time, and be looking for many videos on that. So conscious consumerism is yet another area of how can we create sustainability in our lives. And if we look at that, and it involves really thinking beyond just the point of purchase to the entire life cycle of a product, where it comes from, how it's made, what happens when it's no longer of any use to us. So, it encourages consumers to consider raw materials used in products, the labor conditions, obviously, in which those are made, and the product's durability and end of life disposal of that. So by evaluating all these factors, individuals can make some purchasing decisions that align with some good sustainability principles. So understanding product life cycle leads to obviously a greater awareness of the environmental and social impact of that. And our purchases, it demands some transparency from the producers of the product. It demands obviously that we be mindful of the ecological footprint. Say that 3 times. Ecological footprint. Ecological footprint. Ecological footprint. Okay, now I think I have it. Of our consumption habits. So, for instance, choosing products made from renewable resources like bamboo, or sustainably harvest wood, and those that offer a clear and ethical supply chain obviously can minimize many of the negative environmental impacts. Yeah, I think about this, and I think about, for many years we've traveled to the sub-Saharan continent of Africa, or the country of Zambia in sub-Saharan Africa. And in that country, it's a country rich with minerals, with emeralds, with copper, and many other natural elements. And over the years, that not to be in politics of who owns what, but the Chinese have moved in to exploit those resources, and the way in which they do so is just ravaging that land. There's really no consideration whatsoever for both the human capital that they are using in the Zambian people, nor the environmental capital that they're destroying as they're just totally strip mining that company and totally pillaging the minerals that are available there with really no regard of what they're leaving behind. So certainly, the way things are built, the way they're sourced, and the way they're manufactured and distributed are all things that we should really keep in mind as we're looking to be conscious consumers. So, supporting ethical businesses, and the situation I just mentioned to you is a far cry from being an ethical business. Profitable, sure, but ethical. I would say the way that that government has taken over those mines and that business from the locals of Zambia is unethical beyond belief, and certainly it's not environmentally friendly in any way, shape, or form. So that's including fair labor practices, which we've just told, right? So the Chinese have bought all of those mineral rights from people and governments there that needed the money or were totally corrupt and let it happen. And as a result, none of the money is staying in Zambia. It's all going to Chinese corporations back in mainland China. And they use the resources of the Zambian people as their labor at less than optimal wages, less than optimal working conditions. And all of those things, in my mind, have a ripple effect. If you have any conscience and any soul and any compassion whatsoever, and go to one of those countries and see the living conditions for most of those people, then you just have to feel um, some disgust in what has happened, the way that happened. So we really need to be looking at companies and governments that prioritize values that can drive changes in some corporate behaviors and encourage businesses to consider the triple bottom line of people, planet, and profit. So, that's fine. Ethical businesses often have certifications like Fair Trade or B Corps, which indicate adherence to some strict standards in various aspects of their operations. So choosing businesses like that obviously is for our purchases can also have a ripple effect in inspiring other companies to adapt similar type practices or remain competitive and relevant in the market where we as consumers are becoming more and more value driven. So just keep that in mind, and there's certainly some topics that we'll talk on over time. Then we're going to look at some transparency and supply chain impact. It's a big name. There's a lot of big words in supply chain, but basically it's how a product gets from its origination to its final destination, which is us. And so we will definitely look into that. That became a buzzword during COVID when things were totally disrupted, and you learned that many of the raw elements that we need for products that we use daily in the United States, lithium batteries in our cell phones and our computers and Apple watches and everything else, right? Those aren't natural elements that are local necessarily to the United States and have to come from all over the world. And when those get blocked, or the apparatus to get them from country to country gets blocked, obviously there's costs that happen there, there's delays that happen, there's inflation that happens. All of those things that we experience today can be pretty much directly related back to supply chain back during the COVID era, and even before, as we were trying to offshore and not only offshore but automate supply chain more and more and more without any human condition or any human element being a part of that. Certainly all came to light when the world was shut down with COVID for a short amount of time. So we have the right to know where our products are coming from both the social and environmental costs associated with that production. Transparency in supply chains are not only more ethical, but they also enable consumers to make better decisions that can lead to reduced environmental impact. A product supply chain can be extensive, often involving numerous countries, as we were just talking about, and various methods of extraction, production, and distribution, which we've talked on a couple of those, as far as we were talking about the Zambia example, and also with things coming from China or being produced in Mexico or India or the Philippines or wherever they might be, and then not being able to even get them back to the country that is the consumer country for that. So all of those things, they add to the product's carbon footprint, obviously, whether it's oil being shipped from the Middle East to China, or oil being sent from the Middle East back to the United States for both production of in plastics, chemicals, or whether it's being used for gasoline, whatever the case might be, right? I mean, the movement of raw materials and products around the world definitely leaves a footprint behind it. So we always want to be somewhat cognizant of that and see what we can do to make them as short and sustainable as possible when it comes to supply from beginning to end. So as long as we, demanding this transparency and consumer, and we're looking at businesses to streamline processes and hopefully opt for more eco-friendly transportation and production methods, right? Expanding our conscious consumerism underscores the importance of considering the full life cycle of products, supporting businesses with ethical practices, and demanding transparency of supply chains. Now, all of these together can significantly shift consumer behaviors toward more sustainability, more influencing market trends and corporate accountability. Now, I will say to all of that I do not believe that government-imposed mandates and government-imposed regulations are the way to a better, sustainable society. I certainly believe it's by our own conscience and by our own free will, and making, decisions that are good for our not only our economy but good for our environment and good for our personal situation and make common sense are the way to move forward. Though in all of this, as we're talking, I do not believe that this is a top-down governmental approach. I believe it's a bottom-up, people doing what's best for themselves and their families in the most sustainable way and ecological way is the way we move forward. So, one of the most direct ways that we can contribute to a sustainable lifestyle is just conserving energy within our houses, right? It's okay if we have to use a quilt when it's cold or a blanket when it's cold instead of having an 85-degree home or a 70-degree home. Same in the summer, right? And if we look at it, our lights and our air conditioning and, being in the southern states where we are and it's 100-plus degrees on many, many days during the summer, air conditioning is definitely a necessity. However, there are many times where we can help with that with ceiling fans and other things, so we're not necessarily having to run an air conditioner to keep them home 70 degrees. It's with air movement and other things we can keep it quite comfortable and not run the air conditioning quite as much as we would naturally like. Obviously, lighting is a big deal. Going to LED lighting, which I'm a big fan of. Natural lighting, I'm also a big fan of. Opening the windows, right? Let a little vitamin D in the house, it's okay. And I think it's good for us overall. And obviously, regular maintenance of our heating and air conditioning and cooling systems, obviously. Having them replaced at regular intervals. We were just having this discussion in a group I was in the other night, and it wasn't even in the sense of being sustainable, just that water heaters, air conditioners, and heaters, they have a lifespan, and at some point they will be going out, or they get inefficient, or they end up rupturing in the case of a water heater and flooding homes and such things as that. So it all plays into that of maintaining your appliances, keeping them as efficient as possible, keeping filters changed, just basic common sense stuff that all of it matters, and it all ends up playing into the longer term quote unquote carbon footprint that is the catchphrase of the day and the year and the decade, it seems. So all of those things play into it, and we can certainly all do a little bit better job, myself included, on making sure our houses are insulated, making sure we have storm doors and wind gaps closed, so we're not leaking air out of the house and making the air conditioners run more than they need to, especially in those periods of high demand, as we just mentioned, like in Texas in the summertime. It's hot, and everything we can do to help reduce our loads during those times is certainly needed. Obviously, adoption of renewable energy where it makes sense, wind, solar, hydroelectric, all of those make sense to some degree. Solar panels where they make sense can maybe help break back a little bit on it. I have a hard time finding the break even on solar, but that does not mean it's not a good technology. I just feel it has quite a long ways to go yet before it becomes a mainstream fuel for me, if you will, for powering my home, for sure. But as more and more people go toward that, there is some that's less and less electrical generation that's happening in power plants, and it's happening on the roof of your house, and so all of those things make sense, and it's something that we certainly all need to look at where it is a viable alternative and a viable resource for us. So if we can't install those systems, fine, choosing a green provider for electricity, which I can tell you I do that. Right? Of course, we're in a deregulated, regular electrical environment in the state I live in, and that's okay, but they get the provider I buy it from basically gets most of or a vast majority of the energy that I use from wind generation farms and other renewables. So, it's a minor way we can help, but it's a way we can help nonetheless in helping keep us sustainable and continue to try to reduce our footprint on the environment in which we live. So, transportation choices, we can always look at that one. It's a big one these days. The government's trying to mandate mile per gallon mandates that are almost impossible to hit with an internal combustion engine. So we're looking at possibly electric vehicles becoming much more widespread. Public transportation obviously is a way to not one butt and one seat and one car as we go down the road. So plenty of things we can be done. Hybrids maybe, that one seems to make sense to me, a total electric automobile, given the state of our energy grid in many parts of the country. I have a hard time seeing how that's even a sustainable choice until we get more and more of our electrical grid up, so we're not having brownouts and blackouts like many third world countries do, which we are starting to run into that in many parts of the country, that we're running into rolling outages and rolling into brownouts and in some cases blackouts. Take for example 2 years ago when the freeze in Texas, the opposite end of the perspective, where the entire grid for the state of Texas basically went out for a week in sub-zero temperatures, and that's not something that's a good situation to be in either, and adding more stress on the grid with electrical vehicles. We have to figure that one out up front before we add more demand on the back end. So just a personal view that as much as it makes sense to have an electric vehicle in my mind, I totally agree with the concept. I think it's a great thing to do. I just don't believe that it's at a point where we add more electrical vehicles that helps with the environmental footprint of generating more electricity that's going to be needed in the grid to be able to keep the cars running on the other end. So that's a circular argument I'm sure we can go around and around with forever and ever and ever, amen. But it's definitely things that we will be looking at and exploring as alternatives in the future as we continue to try to get better. Water conservation and management, now that's one we'll want to look into because in my part of the country we've seen the population increase probably 25 to 30% a year as people move in here from other parts of the country, getting away from political issues of taxation and non-affordable housing and all of those things. This part of the country has absolutely exploded, and inadvertently while we don't necessarily have a water problem yet, it is definitely one where population is outgrowing the water in the area, and we certainly need to start looking at conservation and more efficient management of our water resources as we get more and more people in this part of the country that are, developers are building houses, hundreds by the time, and people are moving in here hundreds of a week, and that definitely puts a strain on existing resources. So that's a critical part. Water is always going to be a critical part of our lives, regardless of if we do it sustainably or not. Either we'll have water or we won't if we don't try to do some kind of responsible conservation of that water and prevent as much waste of that as possible. So there's simple things like fixing leaks in your faucets and pipes. It's amazing to me how much water is lost just by a drippy faucet on a daily basis. A gallon here, a gallon there. Before you know it, you have hundreds of thousands or millions of leaky faucets around the country, and we're talking millions of gallons of water that could be saved. So it's just significantly from something that just we probably don't even think about. Other things, low flow shower heads, toilets, things like that. Taking a toilet that uses 2 gallons of water versus 5 gallons of water every time you flush it. All of those things. Just a conscious decision we have to make to be able to reduce our water usage from our daily activities. Same in showering, same in washing our dishes, brushing our teeth, turning off the tap while we're brushing our teeth, and as opposed to letting it run for the 2 minutes that we brush our teeth if you're doing it properly. So all of our appliances and all of those things, they're all getting more efficient as we upgrade those. Obviously, we need to continue to look at more and more efficient appliances as we move forward. Same with our landscaping, right? I live on an acre lot. It takes a lot of water and grass, but we're looking at maybe doing more of the xeriscaping, if you will, and I'm looking at maybe even going to drought-friendly landscaping to continue to help reduce the water usage, not only from a cost perspective, just from the fact of how much water I have to use to keep my grass alive in the extreme heat that we have in this part of the United States in the summertime. So it's one of those things I'm certainly looking at, and we'll look at some ways that, can we make more water efficient landscapes? Of course we can. Have I done it? Yes, myself? No, of course I haven't. But I will be looking into ways I can do that, and we will certainly be making some content on how we can do that and how I'm implementing that in my own life to go on with that. Other things though, if say you don't just go and completely put gravel and cactus in your yard and leave it to the environment to take care of that, putting in better watering systems instead of just broadcast sprinklers with soaker hoses and things that will put water directly on the roots of plants, as opposed to spraying water that's half of which is evaporating before it ever really gets into the ground. Also, you can look at mulching and adding soil amendments and such things to your yard that will actually help with water retention, absorption, and keeping you from having to water nearly as much. I've seen some people that use rainwater to collect water, with rain barrels to collect water that they can use for just gardening and household plants, flower bed plants and things like that. So all good things. And obviously one on a much larger scale would be stormwater management, where you would look at that from probably more of a governmental or city entity type situation, but not necessarily. We certainly need to be looking at that though for rain gardens and more permeable type pavements that allow the water to seep into the ground and not just run off and end up running down creeks and rivers and into lakes and ending up with more pollutants in it as it goes through with pesticides and those types of things. Just trying to mimic natural hydrological cycles as much as we can, and helping enhance our local ecosystems, and providing habitat for native species, which is a big issue in my part of the country. We continue to take pasture land and it's not really forest, but tree populated land, and turning it into houses and parking lots. So that's, I would think, from a regulatory point of view, and that's something that can definitely be looked at as not taking every piece of green grass around and turning it into something that's not grass anymore. And so anyway, it's just one of those things. It's a bit of it's a pet peeve of mine at the moment, just because of the way my part of the country has grown in leaps and bounds, doesn't seem to be with any good regard of maintaining green space and spaces for our animals and the deer and everything else that's already part of the season, or the part of the cycle. I mean, God put them on the earth for a reason, and we're forcing them out of their natural habitat, which I would say is limiting whatever their reason for being on earth is. And anyway, if we can collect rainwater for non-potable uses, decreasing demand on our municipal water supplies for that, especially during peak usage times in the summer times primarily. So it's all things that we can do. Yet again, common sense things, nothing major, just doing what we do and trying to take care of our environment in the way that we can take care of our product, take care of our environment. So we have many more things that we can be talking about and will be talking about. Supporting sustainable brands. We've kind of touched on a little bit, and we will definitely be looking into the eco-friendly shopping and supporting those sustainable brands when we can. There's definitely companies about that prioritize environmental responsibility in their production processes and models, and using sustainably sourced materials, fair trade practices, striving for carbon neutrality. Obviously, we support those companies. We can definitely be adding more to a sustainable economy by doing that. Our durable goods, we've touched on that as well, buying goods that are built to last and getting away from the throwaway society that we've gotten into, choosing quality over quantity, reducing the need for frequent replacements of items, diminishing our waste and consumption of resources in that regard. In addition to that, products that are designed to be repairable extend the life of the item, number one, and they uphold the principles of a circular economy, where the value of products and materials is maintained for as long as possible. So that one just makes sense to me. Having mindful consumption, obviously about being aware of the life cycle of products, the resources used in making them, involves questioning the need for a purchase, maybe a little bit of minimalism in there, considering the product's environmental footprint and opting for items that have less impact on the planet. Could be mean buying fewer items of clothing, maybe, I don't know. But choosing well-made pieces that don't need to be replaced as often. Or investing in electronics that come with a guarantee for repair services. Basically, mindful consumption means just being aware of greenwashing when companies give false impressions of their environmental efforts. Consumers, we need to be critical of our marketing claims that we see and just seek out transparent information about the products we buy. Obviously, we can always look at waste-free alternatives to those things that we use and buy. It's a significant component of eco-friendly shopping. Looking for waste-free alternatives, including buying in bulk possibly to reduce packaging waste, using reusable containers, selecting items that are recyclable or compostable when you're done with them. Many communities now are starting to get towards zero waste stores. Don't really have those around where I am so much, but I'm certainly starting to see those around the country where you can purchase food and household items without any packaging, or with packaging that can be returned and reused, which I think is a fantastic idea. And we will certainly be looking into those. So, in our transportation and travel section, obviously, one thing that really bugs me is our elites of our economy, if you will, some of our czars in our government that like to preach to me about how I should continue to reduce and reuse and recycle in my life to reduce my travel footprint by using public transportation, or having to go spend $70,000 for an automobile that I can buy for $50, just because it's electric or hybrid. Yet they fly from global conference to global conference on a private jet, them and themselves, and are yet to reduce a carbon footprint in the least. So I say all of that to say we will look at things that might green up our transportation and travel a little bit, talking some about public transport and how we can do for that. Maybe looking at ride sharing and some other things in those areas where it makes sense. Obviously, trains, automobiles, subways, all of those, they all make sense to me to use if they're safe to use, and if you're in an area where you can use those. There are many parts of our country, however, where you can't do that. And For me to be told that I must get an electric automobile to get me from point A to Z, which I can't get from point A to Z in some parts of my state without having to stop and spend several hours to recharge enough to move on. Um, some of those they're just not realistic alternatives in all parts of the country. But nonetheless, we still need to reduce emissions. We need to reduce greenhouse gases to the extent that we can, and there's many ways we can do that, and we will certainly be looking into many of those. Obviously, getting out of your car and maybe walking and cycling to some places not only it would help us be a little healthier, it would certainly help with some traffic and many other things that go along with being a little bit more green. Sustainable air travel, that's one. Obviously, the air travel, we go all over the world now in what ways that we never were able to do in the past. My ancestors, immediate previous generation, the thought of hopping on an airplane and flying to a far off state or a far off country just for a meeting and come back in a couple of days is something that wasn't even in their vocabulary. Where in today's world, there's really nothing for us to get on a plane to go from California to New York, spend 2 or 3 days, and turn around and be back from New York to California. So just because it's there and we're able to do it does not necessarily make it the right thing to do, especially in maybe some business type situations where we could be looking more into video conferencing and telecommuting and virtual meetings and all of those things that we're somewhat forced into during COVID. Something I've done for years, given I've been home officing for well over 25 years now. Virtual meetings and conference calls and all of those types of things are not new to me. They kind of became relatively new to a lot of new people in 2020 and 2021. It's certainly not a panacea and an end-all be-all. It is not something that I think companies have to be 100% telecommuting. They have a right to have employees in their offices. And I think there's a lot of synergies to be had to have people in their offices as well. But I'm a full believer in remote work. I've done it for myself for years and years and years and years. So, but occasionally you do have to get on an airplane and you do have to go across the country or a state over or whatever the case might be. And we all know that air travel is a major contributor to carbon emissions. And but there's many airlines that are now starting to have carbon offset programs where what they produce in pollution with an airplane that has to go from point A to point Z, they can invest in renewable energies in other parts of their business, planting of trees to help counteract that pollution, and other projects that help compensate for the emissions caused by flight. So when you're planning a trip, though, opting for a direct route and longer stays can obviously reduce the frequency of flights and a carbon footprint. So we've already talked on virtual meetings. I'm really not going to go into that one, but with Zoom and Teams and every other type of technology that's come along that you can do both on your phone and your computer, being in an office every day is not something that's a absolute necessity, and I'm a firm believer that some balance of that is a good thing to do, both for employee retention, employee satisfaction, never mind the ecological benefits of it, and still being able to keep a company efficient at the same time. So, having run several companies and running organizations, I am certainly a big proponent of some remote and some telecommunication work in those environments. And it keeps offices from being lit up and air conditioned and heated and opened and commuting and all of those various things that go along with getting to an office every day. So perfectly one topic that we'll definitely look into quite a bit as we go along over the year. So we've talked about reducing water, conserving water, and the ways we can do that with low flow toilets and low capacity toilets, low flow shower heads, and just basic sense on that. We will definitely look into many of those things and products that can help us do that. So be looking for those along the way. Energy conservation in our homes with lights and efficient appliances, helping to take some of the demand off of fossil fuels. I'm of the school that fossil fuels will never go away. There's just so many things that is dependent on that, and I don't think that becoming 100% non-dependent on fossil fuels necessarily does anything better for the client than, or for the climate, than having some fuel dependence, fossil fuel dependence. It's just in many areas of manufacturing and of fuel generation and certain other things, it's just some of the most efficient that there is. Is there always better ways to do it, and to do it with less pollution and those types of things? Absolutely. So I'm not a teetotal guy one way or the other when it comes to I have to be 100% carbon zero. I think there's many ways that it's a multi-pronged effort here, and if you get enough people doing enough different things, then we're making a sustainable impact that is something that is actually sustainable year over year, month over month, generation over generation. And at some point in time, then we do really see some major cultural shifts and things that can keep us as a civilization moving forward for many, many years to come, and leaving something better for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren down the road. So there's just so many, right? So whether it's renewable energy, whether it's sustainable building practices and materials, being recycled and sustainably sourced materials, natural lighting, green roofs, energy efficient heating and cooling systems, all of those things. I mean, anything that we can do to be more efficient in our consumption obviously is good for our long-term survivability and the survivability of our planet and our environment. But you can take it into a business realm too and say, just from an investment perspective, being an investor myself, ethical investing involves, choosing to invest in companies that with funds that align with my personal values, along with social responsibility, environmental stewardship, corporate ethics, avoiding investments in industries that can contribute to pollution and social injustices, supporting governments that do the same thing, many, many things. So we just need to look at possibly, employing the strategies like ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance criteria to screen potential investments. A non-environmental company not getting funded as well as one that's following some of those practices. It's just a way, by going into the pocketbook of the company by way of stock and investment, then you can possibly affect some change. Obviously, supporting green businesses, that's just a no-brainer. Doing that, it helps in all the initiatives of becoming a more civilized and sustainable society. I think we need to look into that as well. Community-based initiatives, helping one another out, swap meets, food banks, just name it. It's, it really is all about loving one another as and supporting one another, and not having that us versus them mentality that we discussed a little earlier, that my way is the only way, or your way is the only way, and my way is wrong because your way is right, and vice versa is not a way for us to function as a society, and it's not a way for us to move forward any sustainable goals of improving our ecological dilemma, as some people believe that we're in. I think that we are definitely polluting our world, and we can do a much better job of not doing that. And I think we certainly need to explore the interrelationships we have against one another, among one another, um, and how it plays into that. Because I do believe that, you know, me versus you and us versus them and they versus others is a big contributor to um, some of the issues that we have, or many of the issues that we have, right? Whether you're a far left wing political person, or you're a far right wing political person, or you're somewhere in the middle, and whatever, we're all human. We all came onto this earth uh, as infants. We're all going off of this earth as corpses. And the sooner we can learn that, and learn that as we work together, things are better. And I value your opinion and you value mine, because we all have a view on things that is not absolute, right? It may be absolute in our mind, but that doesn't make it absolutely correct or incorrect. And it takes all of us working together from all spectrums of life, at all ages in life, in all nationalities, all racial backgrounds, to understand the full picture, because the picture may be a glass half full on my side, and it's a glass half empty on your side, and it could be lemonade to one person and Kool-Aid to another. And when it's all said and done, it's all through the lens we look, and it takes all of those lenses in order for us to come up to a full, complete answer, and one that can actually help and move forward and be something that all can do going forward, and make a generational impact. So if we just look, there's really about 10 things here that start, and there's hundreds of ways that we can implement it, and we will certainly look into that. But living sustainably involves so many approaches, and they encompass every aspect of our life, and all contribute to reducing environmental footprint, and a healthier planet, and a place that we all want to live, and a place that we all want our kids to live, and a place that we all want our grandkids to grow up in. So just to recap, right? So reducing carbon footprint, obviously, that's just focusing on energy efficiency and renewable resources as we can. Maybe for many of us, or many of you, it's an eco-friendly diet, whether that be plant-based, or again supporting local and organic farmers and ranchers that may put many of these ecological friendly practices into place in their farms and ranches. Sustainable gardening, looking at encouraging the local biodiversity, using organic methods and cultivation of food that reduces reliance on industrial agriculture. I certainly believe that the more we can get away from industrialized anything and back to individualized everything, the better off we'll be, and the more friendly it will be to our planet, our environment, our social lives, everything about our lives. I think we've gotten so big business that we have taken the human element out of everything, and if we can put the human element back in, and quit hiding behind mean tweets and no accountability because of what social media has done for many people, then I think the better off we're going to be. So water conservation obviously is another one. Saving water where we can. Yeah, it gets redone, it gets reproduced, but droughts cause issues. Many would say that's due to global warming and such things as that. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I'm not a scientist, so water conservation is always something we should all do. Energy efficiency, we've already talked, which goes back to reducing carbon footprint, but still. Energy efficient appliances as you upgrade those in your homes and workplaces, and taking care of cutting down on energy consumption and cost is just good for all of us. Reducing, reusing, and recycling. Been a mantra of mine and my wife's for a long time. So just maintaining the 3 R's to the extent that we can is obviously a very simple way that we can do that. If you're a fashionista, sustainable fashion choices, right? Choosing ethical and sustainable clothing options, and get rid of the throwaway mentality in your clothing. Mindful waste reduction, composting, single-use plastics, getting rid of those, recycling, upcycling, and we already mentioned composting of organic waste. Obviously, eco-friendly shopping, supporting sustainable brands, buying durable products, engaging in mindful consumption, green transportation to the extent that it makes sense with public transport, maybe getting out the bicycle or putting on the tennis shoes, eco-friendly vehicles, whether those be hybrid or just better fuel efficient, internal combustion engines, or whether it's an electric vehicle. All of those make sense in certain environments and in certain use cases, and we will certainly be looking into all the various options there, and we would hope that, as your conscience and your desires guide you, that you would do what is best for you. And conservation of resources, obviously, water, energy, all of those, to continue to perfect our vital resources for generations to come. And the more we get to, the more we don't do that, obviously, the harder it's going to be in our future generations to do so, and the more radical changes would have to be in future endeavors to try to continue to save the resources that are not a finite resource, are not an infinite resource. And of course, sustainable investment, yet another way we can do that, by hitting companies in the pocketbook with our investment dollar. So, embracing a lifestyle, it's not just a personal choice. Sustainability is really a collective responsibility too. It requires understanding that each and every action that we take, no matter how small or how large that might be, can and does contribute to a larger impact on our planet's health. And it's just something we all need to be mindful of. And by integrating simple strategies, we don't have to be all in 100% teetotal, no other way is there to do it, but just by integrating strategies and reducing our carbon footprint, to making more conscious consumer and investment decisions, we can drive significant change, and without significant harm on any one individual or any one country or any one class. It can certainly, many small actions end up making great strides. So just combine that with our community engagement and support for policies to promote sustainability. All of that can lead to a much more eco-friendly and sustainable economy, and a healthier world, and healthier people. So it's just imperative that we remember that it's not a destination, it's a continuous journey. It is not that everything in life. Happiness is not a destination, it's a journey. It's a state of mind and where you are today. Gratitude is not an end point, it's a journey. We should all be grateful for those things that we have today, and continue to have, and what we'll have tomorrow. Living a life of gratefulness really is, in my mind, a perfect complement to living a life that would promote sustainability and ecological health. You're grateful for what the good Lord has given us, and you're protecting that, and you're enhancing that for generations beyond you. So all of these none are an endpoint. It's all a destination. And as we become more aware, and we become more educated about all of our environmental consequences of our choices, we have to adapt. We have to evolve, and our behaviors have to change accordingly. And I have no reason to think otherwise. As I've gone through my life, adaptation is just part of it. Nothing is static in life. Nothing is forever in life. Come to find out, as I've found out recently, when losing a child to cancer, in her early 40s, nothing is forever, right? We always think we'll outlive our children, and that's not always the way it works. So we have to live in today, plan for tomorrow, and take actions today that have consequences tomorrow. And if we do that, as I mentioned, it's we all make small strides, small changes, small contributions, and before you know it, we've had a major change in the way our world looks. So we're not just preserving the environment for its own sake, right? We're trying to ensure that it's livable and a prosperous planet for all of our future generations. I certainly think about that a lot at my age, and um, have all along, of how can I make a better place for my kids, and now it's my grandkids, and I would assume in the not too distant future my great grandkids. So 3 or 4 generations down the road, what are we doing today that's going to leave a better world for them tomorrow? And it's a worthy cause in my mind. So sustainable living, therefore, it's a testament to a kind of future that we want to create, and a future that's not just survivable, but thriving and harmony with the natural world. And without it, we have no world. So all of those is a very long-winded video to tell you I'm changing the focus of the channel to still be eco-friendly, still be about sustainability, just not about one particular product in general. So as we move forward with this, it's going to be a fun journey for me. I look forward to creating content that addresses all of the various things I've talked to in this video, and I'm sure many other things that I haven't even come to know about yet, that as I do research and look around and see what is out there, that will come to mind and will come to us very soon, and I'll be happy to share that with you here. So we look forward to it. We thank you for if you made it all the way to the end of this, yay, and we'll talk to you soon on this channel. So long.